Hey, what's up? It's been a super long time. I've been posting to my gaming channel and a few other places, but all in all, I've really just been chilling, dealing with like whatever's going on in life. So, haven't really been talking a whole lot about pretty much anything really. So, lately there are some things that I've been wanting to talk about and don't entirely know like who to reach out to talk about it. So, I thought it'd be nice to, just make some YouTube videos and talk about some things. And this, like starting out, is pretty much gonna have like nothing to do with the main stuff I want to talk about. It's just I've been watching some stuff and it came up, so I was like, yeah, like that is something that I feel like I could just speak on a little bit just from like personal experience. So I was like, yeah, sure, like, oh, I'll definitely talk about it. So I'm gonna be, chances are, probably uploading some more things and just overall, yeah, just covering things and talking about things. And you'll probably see like a handful of videos like that. But what I'm doing right now, if anybody's curious, is playing Path of Exile, the first one. And I wanted to record it. I really wanted to like put it up on YouTube. But right now, I don't entirely know how to get it recorded properly, just because lately it's just been bugging out. I've been reading some people's takes on trying to fix it. Um, but I don't entirely know if like that's viable, if it like holds up, whatever the case may be. I have some extra footage saved onto my computer from a bunch of clips I took while playing other games, so I decided that I will use this as background footage. Um, so yeah, that's what a lot of this is like. That's what you're just going to be seeing, a lot of stuff that I did have recorded with friends or by myself or whatever the case may be. And I'll just have it running as background, whatever, just because I don't think it's going to end up on a gaming channel. So why not, right? Anyhow, yeah, I'm gonna get into it. Basically, what I want to talk about today was bullying. So I'm watching a clip from RDC World, and it's Mark, and he's going crazy about like it was some clip that he had on stream. I'm sure it wasn't recent. It's just my YouTube has been getting recommended a lot of crazy, just random stuff lately, and so um, yeah, he was talking about this whole thing with like bullying and how he feels like he could talk about it because it was some stuff that was going on with him and like what's happening in his school and whatnot. But essentially, he was feeling as if he doesn't know, like he was saying he doesn't know what was going on at like anybody else's schools, but like at his school, he wasn't getting bullied for watching anime, and that's because he couldn't be bullied because he wasn't allowing himself to get bullied. I wanted to speak on that just because when I was in school growing up, and this is all just centered around anime, essentially, right? It's just tied in with bullying because bullying was like a fat chunk, a fat part of it all. But essentially, what went down is back when I was a kid, right? When I actually went to like elementary and middle school, and it wasn't like uni or whatever the case may be. Back when I was still that young, liking anime was weird. It was super weird. People just like didn't hang around you. They didn't talk to you. You were essentially an outcast if like you openly discussed and enjoyed anime. And I know it's different for everybody. Some people probably have like really similar um, experiences. Some people probably have completely different experiences. But for me, that's how it was. And so I've got probably not like a million stories, but just a few that like I can recall looking back on it to this day, um, of like everything that happened. So essentially, um, I remember coming home when I was a kid, and it used to be so fun. All right, like you get home from school, you would have been doing God knows what, running around doing all this extra stuff, and by the time you finally make it home, it's like you get to relax, you get to chill. I didn't really know like how to cook as a kid. My parents had taught me how to make hot dogs, so I was like really skinny, really small as a kid, and ended up growing up to be pretty fat because every single day I got home from school, I would eat hot dogs, and I would eat 2 hot dogs and like a plate of chips or half a plate of chips. It was like Doritos. Um, and I'd have like ketchup and mustard or whatever on the hot dogs. It was just that's how it was. That was like my day to day meal until my parents came home. When my parents came home, we would have dinner, and after dinner, went to bed. But before my parents came home, I'd come home. I'd be there with my younger brother, and we'd go into the living room, and Toonami Jetstream would be on TV. For those of you who don't know, Toonami Jetstream more so is kind of tied in to Adult Swim now. If Cartoon Network is even still around in some way, shape, or form these days, what would happen is Cartoon Network would be playing on a TV, right? On cable, back when cable still existed and was like prominent. Cartoon Network would be playing on a TV. And then Cartoon Network would turn into Toonami Jetstream, which would be about like midday, about the time we'd be making it home, anywhere from like 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Then Toonami Jetstream would turn into Adult Swim, and that's where stuff like the Boondocks and Moral Oral and all this other stuff would come on, right? Well, eventually, Toonami Jetstream ended up being tied to Adult Swim, so it was Cartoon Network, and then it was Adult Swim. And Toonami Jetstream would be parts of Adult Swim, and then other times it'd just be Adult Swim. At one point, I believe Toonami Jetstream was only on Saturday instead of like being every night on Adult Swim. Nowadays, from little things that I've seen, I believe Toonami Jetstream is damn near every night on Adult Swim now, but I can't verify that because I'm not using cable 100% anymore like I used to. And even if I did, I had heard that some parts of Cartoon Network had shut down, and so to even really get into like watching stuff like that, I'd have to get on to like I wouldn't even be able to tell you, like some website or some like streaming service that offered some type of Cartoon Network, whatever, which some do, so it's not like completely foreign to me, but whatever the case. Essentially, I'd come home as a kid, make my food, and chill with my brother, and we'd watch anime on Cartoon Network. It would be the big ones at the time, from what I can remember, was Naruto, like PTS Naruto before Shippuden, Dragon Ball Z, like the OG, like Dragon Ball Z. It wasn't like Dragon Ball. It wasn't Kai. I don't even think Kai was invented at that time, right? It was just Naruto, Dragon Ball Z. And then, like, over time, more anime would start getting added. But around that same time, Toonami would go to Adult Swim. Cool. So, the biggest ones I remember were Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. I hated Dragon Ball Z growing up. I hated it so much. My brother loved it. My friends loved it. My friends who watched anime loved it. I hated it. When you look at when it came to the games, I hated it. When you look at the concept of the games, at least in my opinion growing up, it was cool being able to fight and do all this extra stuff or whatever, but to me as a kid, it all just felt the same. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, sure, certain villains and certain whatevers could pretty much everybody could fly. That's first and foremost. Everybody that was a playable character that people really enjoyed playing could fly, just about, right? But outside of them, it didn't really feel like there was a lot of variety, in my opinion. Combos and whatnot felt the same. Attacks felt the same. I just didn't like it. When it was a game of comparison between, Dragon Ball Z and Naruto was my favorite. I chose Naruto 100% of the time. I was also terrible at Dragon Ball Z games, but I was pretty decent at Naruto games, so I guess that also kind of clicked in as to why I didn't like it so much. As far as the story goes as a kid, I did like watching Dragon Ball, but I didn't really watch Dragon Ball Z as heavy. When it was on, I was watching it because, it was on TV, there wasn't really much else to do outside of going outside, maybe playing on the PlayStation 2. If you even had one, right? Or playing a board game or card games or something, right? So it's kind of TV's on, it's just what you're going to do. Plus, as a kid, I don't think we were really able to just go outside if our parents weren't home. And then when they were home, we had a curfew, like a super strict curfew, because our parents didn't want us in trouble. So it's like for a good little bit when we were coming home and nobody was there, um, we were just watching TV. Cool. Now that I've gotten that like set up for you, um, I go to school. This went on for years, by the way. You know, hot dogs and chips every evening or every afternoon, I guess I should say, and then anime. That was pretty much my life for the longest time, and it was cool. It was comfortable. It was nice. It was really enjoyable to be in. The issue comes is like when you start getting older and you're going to like these different schools and whatnot, you're meeting different people. I stayed in like a fairly small-ish town. It's not as small as like a town with like 50 total people or 100 total people or whatever, but it's definitely smaller than like bigger like towns and cities where they've got constant traffic and all these people are inhabiting areas and all this extra stuff. It's definitely different from all of that for sure. And my schools that like I grew up like going to were mainly white. Like they had a lot of white people there. There was rarely ever any other races. I was one of the few black people who actually went to the school at all. I had like maybe one to two black teachers in the entire school like district. Everybody else was white. A really different time. But I was like a real nerd about it all. Anime was super cool. Anime, outside of some stuff that happened like with my family, anime got me into art, got me into drawing. And I used to draw a lot. Sometimes I still do, just not as much as I used to. Also, because it got me into drawing, it got me into animation. I was working on animation as well. A lot of the games that I played were like anime centered whenever we could find some. And when it wasn't anime centered, it was like cartoon centered. So, it begs to show that obviously like I was super into anime, right? I really love the art style. I really love the comedy. I really love the characters. I really love the story. If I was ever lucky enough for some nearby bookstore to have manga in it, it would make my day. Or how to draw anime book, because internet shopping was alive, but not reasonable in my household at the time. All right, my parents were not buying things on the internet often. All right, nowadays, it's like everybody and their mom buys from the internet, from stuff that they need to just nonsense. Right, but like back then, no shot. Different time to be alive, for sure. But yeah, so I was super into it, and I never really openly discussed it with people, just because it never really came up in conversation. Like I said, majority of my school was white. There were a lot of people who would wear like country clothes and camouflage and all this extra stuff. Cowboy boots to school was just the standard like fit. People were into like Disney Channel and occasionally maybe Nickelodeon when it came to like conversation about stuff to watch on TV as children. But outside of that, it's like, nah, right? Just wasn't happening. Most of the time, people didn't even really care about the stuff that was going on, like at home when you talk to like other students and whatnot. It was more so just whatever was happening in a moment. That's just how it was. Like I said, the older you get, the more things change. You start like realizing you're different from other people. At one point, students, like classmates, were pointing out that I was fat or fatter than majority of them were, or at least a portion of my class was. Students were pointing out that I was black. A lot of other people were white. I had white kids touching my hair and like looking at me as if I were a spectacle, because they hadn't realized that I was different from them until a certain year. And I didn't realize that I was different from them until a certain year. That's when friends stop becoming or stop staying your friends because their family didn't like black people. And, it was just, like I said, it was a crazy time to be alive. Maybe one day I'll have like a series of of that time frame, you know, for people, for the new kids of the new future, you know. Um, but really, what I'm getting at right now is the whole anime thing. So what was going down was eventually I started geeking out about anime and openly talking about it. You know, I'd have printed off pictures of characters from Dragon Ball Z and Naruto that I would use to color in class because we had just little times where we didn't have to do work and teachers would have like drawing or coloring templates, usually the black teachers, and they would offer to, you know, let you goof off and color in class since there was nothing to do. So sometimes they let me print off stuff like Dragon Ball Z or Naruto things to use and color in class. When that wasn't the case, sometimes I was lucky enough to have like my parents have like a printer that I could actually use at class as well. Like not use the printer at class, but you know, take the printer out. I keep saying take the printer out. Print the stuff off, you know. Um, Put it in a binder, take that binder and go to school. And, you know, if I had some free time, be able to actually draw and color and all that, you know. So that's essentially what was going down. All right. And eventually, you know, I was talking about anime and how much I liked it, how much I thought it was cool. I assumed at one point everybody was pretty much the same. So I was like, hey, if I like it, you know, these guys must like it. We all talked about liking like X amount of cartoons and TV shows. So if we like that and we have that in common, then they must like anime as well, right? Wouldn't that just make sense? And the answer is no. No, it would not. Because whenever I'd bring it up in class, and it wasn't like super often, it was just occasionally, you know, I'd be like, oh, hey, yeah, you know, I like anime. I'm into anime. I think it's cool, whatever. And one of my classmates would be like, oh, hey, he likes anime. What a loser. Like, what a freak. Like, I'm not exaggerating. They'd be like, what a loser, what a freak. He's in anime. Like, you're weird. Why do you like that? And anime, isn't anime like the Asian cartoons where all they do is scream and that's it? Like that, no joke, that was quite literally like what was going down in my school. That's how people would react to me liking anime. And to be fair, we were just kids, so it's like, you know, it's just kids talking. Who cares? You haven't fully like developed. You haven't fully woken up. So as a matter, it's just the whole thing that I'm getting at with all of this is while watching like the RDC world clips and whatnot, Mark would talk about, you know, like his experiences and potentially other people's experiences while watching anime or dealing with, you know, anime in your school, etc, etc. So I'm just piggybacking off of that. So yeah, that's what was going down, and eventually it got to the point to where I felt like I couldn't even talk about anime. You know, I felt like it was weird to have something that I thought was fun and cool, and because of that, I just never really like talked about it. And it wasn't just like the name calling or whatnot. For years, kids would like hit me, and I'd get in trouble a lot. You know, defending myself, fighting back, whatever the case may be. So much so that one year my parents told me, hey, you know, like you can't keep fighting. If they hit you, tell a teacher. And, you know, you tell a teacher, but in a school full of, or for the most part, full of white faces, when your kids, they hear, oh, a kid's hitting you, you know, you're just being soft. They're just playing with you, you know, play with them. But the moment I hit them back, it's, you're not allowed to hit this kid. You're suspended. Right. So it was, that's for another conversation, you know, that's for another video. But because of basically my enjoyment in anime, it just became this whole issue where, you know, I was treated differently. I was treated like a weirdo. And I mean, this was from like elementary up until middle school and then like slowly creeping into high school. I even remember I had this one classmate who I wasn't like super close with. I didn't hang out with. I didn't talk with. It was just like some random guy, right? And I remember one day I bring up anime. Actually, no, I didn't bring it up because I was so used to getting like teased about it. It just became like something I kept to myself, right? I remember one day, I was just drawing, keeping to myself, and this guy is mocking me, because at first he was asking me, like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm drawing. And he's like, oh, what are you drawing? And so it's just this character from insert whatever anime here. It's probably Dragon Ball Z, just because at the time everybody was like, not everybody in my school, but Dragon Ball Z was like the biggest whatever at the time. Even though like it wasn't being taught about it in my school personally, whenever we could use the computer, which was that computer with the big back, I think some people called it like the Commodore, that big white one that looks like an old TV. We had one of those, and I used to use this drawing website. It started with like a D. It was like Drago Art, whatever, Da Vinci Art. No, it wasn't DeviantArt, but it was like Drago something, right? And all it was like this website that would teach you how to draw anime characters and just draw things in general. It was super cool. Different time, like I said, super different time. Nowadays, we've got all kinds of sources to teach us how to do stuff, but I would use that and use it as like side by sides to teach me how to draw stuff. And the biggest characters that they had on the website were Dragon Ball Z whenever I went looking for anime. So Dragon Ball Z was like what I was learning to draw. Yeah, and plus it was some of the easier things to draw at the time. Finding pictures of Dragon Ball Z characters was much easier than any other characters, at least for me at the time. And eventually I did end up finding a very small amount of friends who were into anime, so I was able to actually talk with them and, like just share interests and whatnot. So yeah, Dragon Ball Z was just like the anime I ended up like drawing the most. But yeah, I remember this one kid was, asking me what I was drawing. And I was telling him, oh, hey, yeah, it's obviously had to have been Goku, right? I'm drawing Goku from Dragon Ball Z. And he's like, oh, Goku, you're drawing Goku. Look at me, I'm Goku. And I'm from Dragon Ball Z. Just like weird, lame, just weirdo activity, bro, And I just ignored him. Just went back to drawing. And he was like, he continued it on like, oh, like you're weird. Why do you even watch anime? It's cartoons. It's kid stuff. Mind you, at this time, we're all still kids, right? Like this wasn't even high school. This was like maybe middle school, if not under middle school. And like, I'd get it if it was like SpongeBob or something, right? And I even brought that up at one point. I was like, oh, well, I also like SpongeBob and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, SpongeBob's cool, but it's not as weird as like Dragon Ball Z. It's like SpongeBob's a kid show. You know what I mean? Like I don't understand. But the thing is, because this kid was like popular and like the class clown, he got away with a lot of stuff, right? Teachers, if you were like, if the teachers found you funny, if the teachers found you attractive, whatever the case may be, yeah, my school was weird like that. We had some weird instances with that, but teachers never really got fired for it, except for like one. Once again, that's for a different story. But if you fit the right category, you could pretty much get away with whatever you wanted, right? Teachers would just laugh it off. They didn't care. There were times where I was quite literally being hit by like several students, like a gang, damn near, in school. Teachers watched it happen. I looked over at them like, "Are you gonna say anything?" And they look away. So it's like, yeah, school sucked. I hated school for sure. But I remember, yeah, that whole anime thing, and dude would just not leave me alone, pestering me, mocking me. Whole class is laughing. Even the teacher wasn't really laughing, but just didn't care, right? And so a few years pass. We grow up, we get out of school, we got jobs. I'm working some like dead end grocery store type of establishment, and this guy ends up working next to me. Like he like I've been there for a few years. He shows up one year and he's working next to me, and I'm like, I know this man, like he looks familiar. I'm pretty sure this is like that guy from school. And he recognizes me. He's like, oh, hey. And I was like, what's up? He's like, oh man, it's been so long. It's been like so long since I talked to you. It's been so long since I've seen you. How's everything been? And I was like, yeah, everything's cool. And I just wasn't really like in the mood to talk to dude because I mean, outside of the anime thing, just overall, whenever like I was in a room with him, he was either taking shots at me or taking shots at like anybody he could find. It was like his parents raised him to seek attention, right? He wasn't getting it at home, so he did whatever he could in class to get it. And he wanted everybody's approval. So I guess class clown was his next best guess outside of like outright being like a teacher's pet. And I was just like, oh, hey, yeah, man, like I'm cool, just trying to end the conversation. Like, I didn't like you in school, right? What makes you think we're cool now? And he was like, oh man, is there something wrong? I was like, yeah, man, like we weren't really cool in school. Like, why? Like I said, why would we be cool now? And he was like, oh, what? He was like, I thought we were friends. What gave you that idea? Like every time I saw you, you were either making fun of me or like making fun of me. There was no other. You always made fun of me. What in your mind gave you the idea that we were friends? He was like, whoa, like when did I make fun of you? What do you mean? And obviously, one of the first times that I can remember, like that actually stuck, because there were plenty of other times, but one of the first times that I can remember that actually stuck was the Dragon Ball Z thing, like the anime thing. And I told him about it. He's like, oh man, you talking about like from way back when in whatever grade? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh man. He's like, to keep it a buck with you, he's like, I actually loved Dragon Ball Z. He's like, I was watching it the same time you were, like back on Toonami and Cartoon Network. He's like, I loved it. I was like, then why did you suck? Like, why did you suck so much as a human being? And he was like, man, he was like, I just didn't want anybody to tease me about it, so I tease anybody else about it. I'm like, what sense did that make? I'm like, I guarantee you, if you would have came out being like, oh yeah, man, I think it's actually really cool, people would have changed their mind about it. Like you were one of the top people that people liked just because of your charisma. People hung out near you. I mean, we were all kids, mind you, but there were times where even teachers were like watching over you and hanging around you. So like, why be the jerk of the situation? He's like, man, we were kids. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know why I did a lot of the stuff I did. And I was like, fair enough. Like, fair enough point. There's a lot of stories I can bring up of classmates doing some really crazy stuff that, like, looking back on it now, I know for a fact at least one of them was like, I don't know why I did that. I wish I would have never done it. But I can only speak for one of them. The rest, not so much. And so, yeah. After talking about that and covering the air and everything, he's just like, yeah, man, I'm sorry. I didn't want to make you think that like I was just dogging on you or like hating you or whatever. He was like, I was just trying to fit in. And I was like, it's whatever. Like you said, it's old. Why hang on to it? And we were cool. Like after that, everything was chill. We worked together for a while. He stopped working there. And eventually I did too. But it was just stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just with him. That was just one of the examples. There are plenty of others, right? Now to this day, like those same people, now I don't know to this day, but I know like post school, like towards high school leaving, anime started getting bigger and popular. I think RDC World was one of like the biggest places that opened it up. People were like, oh, take an anime too far. Yeah, man, those fight scenes from insert whatever here, sure, we're cool, whatever the case may be. All right. And I always just thought, like, man, you guys are lame. You know what I mean? Because when we were in school, you guys weren't like that. You guys were calling it a kid show, a baby show. You were saying it's weird. You were saying, you were insulting it and insulting anybody that enjoyed it. Now you're hopping on a bandwagon as if you've been watching it this whole time. And it's not like I'm going to hate you for, coming in last minute and hopping on a bandwagon. If you like it, that's awesome, right? I mean, you're just an extra person that I get to like argue with over what character is stronger, what character is cooler, right? I don't care. What I care about is that you were just an absolute disgusting like human being when all this stuff was going down, you know? There was no reason why you should have like openly attacked me or anybody over like what it is we like, right? What sense does that make, man? Like, who is that for? You know what I mean? And so I really, really, really hated that, right? And that, like I said, it was just a repeated thing that stacked up over the course of years. I did get lucky outside of a few, like I was lucky enough to have a few friends who were actually into anime. You know, we played computer games. Eventually, when I had a computer that could run it, we they would share like their manga and their Bionicles and all this stuff with me, and just like bring me deeper into the world of like being a dork, right? And for that, I will always be thankful, because if it wasn't for them, or grateful, because if it wasn't for them, like I wouldn't be into as much as I'm into today. I wouldn't know as much as I know today. I wouldn't have experienced and like went out to, you know, see all the stuff that I went to see, or gotten to dress the way that I dressed in certain situations, gotten to do certain things that would have brought me to, you know, certain situations if it weren't for those friends, you know? So I am thankful for them. But I have had some switch up on me in public just to save face because of stuff like anime and the way that I reacted around, you know, shows and all this extra stuff, right? So it was like a double-edged knife. But yeah, definitely growing up, I was in one of those environments where it was like, oh, if you liked it, you're a loser, right? You're a weirdo, whatever. And this was way before TikTok, way before Vine, way before any of this extra stuff. This was back when, you know, you just had cable. That was it. You just had cable. So yeah, it was definitely an experience for sure. And I do think it's crazy that just in a few years' time, things can flip and change so much in that regard. But I am glad that there aren't really people who are having to go through that like I did, right? Or at least not so much so like I did. I am glad about that, and I mean it's cool. But I did definitely want to talk about that because it was just so like weird, man. And I mean I get it. I feel like kids don't really wake up and become sentient. Like they don't understand what they're doing or saying until they hit a certain point. So it's to be expected for like kids to be disrespectful or jerks or just whatever, because you know that I don't know, man. That's just I feel like what you'd be running into. But that's definitely something I want to talk about. I also had a friend who was way here I come older than me, who was into anime and such as well, and he kind of got me into it more too. But that's it for now.